these short chain fatty acids are very small molecules, they pack a power punch. Majority of the gut microbiome lives in the colon. So if we look at the different parts of the digestive tract, the most concentrated portion is the colon, where we have about 10 raised to 14 microbial cells or bacteria or other microbes that are present. It helps in cancer prevention because it actually helps kill cancer cells. It helps in apoptosis of cancer cells. How children are suffering from ulcerative colitis now. So this was unheard of before. This is because of a lack of short chain fatty acids. Type 2 diabetes is something that is very common in short chain fatty acid deficiencies, in acetate deficiency. So when we eat foods that are rich in fiber, it is like throwing a party for these bugs or for these germs. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this super exciting episode of the Microbiome Superhero podcast. So, today we are going to be focusing on the ninth topic of neurotransmitters, which is short chain fatty acid. Although these short chain fatty acids are very small molecules, they pack a power punch. If you want to know what they do, how important they are in our mental health, in our digestive health, and a lot more, stay tuned and watch till the very end. Please welcome our co-host Sujata Gokhale. Welcome, Sujata.
Hi Rashmi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. So, dear viewers, welcome to our continued series on neurotransmitters. If you have not viewed our previous episodes, click on the link given in the description below. So, today we are shining a light on the SCFAs, that is the short chain fatty acids. These are unsung heroes produced by our gut microbes. And these tiny powerhouses, like Rashmi mentioned, they are acetate, propionate, and butyrate. They play pivotal roles in our health, from aiding digestion to regulating our immune system and even influencing our mood. So then, should we care about these microscopic marvels? So our gut microbiome ferments. You know that Arnajan Next works extensively on gut microbiome and wellness. So our gut microbiome here ferments dietary fibers to produce SCFAs, which then help maintain a healthy gut barrier. We talked about leaky guts in our previous episodes. Please go back and have a look at those. You'll get to know what they are. They reduce inflammation and serve as energy sources for our colon cells. So think of SCFAs as those powerhouses or personal trainers that keep everything in top shape in your gut. So when SCFA levels are balanced, they contribute to your well-being, overall well-being, protecting us from diseases like inflammatory bowel disease, obesity, and even sometimes colorectal cancer. So if it's like having a tiny invisible health squad working tirelessly for you. But however, everything in excess, either even if it's in lower levels as well as in higher levels, that is an imbalance. Whether too much or too little can lead to significant health issues. That is what this podcast is all about. So it's very crucial to understand how to regulate SCFA production through diet and lifestyle. And joining us is our co host, Dr. Rashmi, who is also the expert who's going to answer these questions for you on our podcast. So, Rashmi, can you tell us SCFAs are produced by our gut bacteria fermenting dietary fibers? So, does that mean eating fiber rich food is like throwing party for our gut bugs?
Absolutely. So, what you just mentioned about the short chain fatty acids is very, very important. And it is very unfortunate that the gut microbiome is very underrated. Most people are not even aware about it. So, viewers, if you have not checked it out yet, there are many, many videos we have posted on our YouTube channel about it. So when we talk about the gut microbiome, it is present everywhere in our gut, but majority of the gut microbiome lives in the colon. So if we look at the different parts of the digestive tract, the most concentrated portion is the colon, where we have about 10 raised to 14 microbial cells or bacteria or other microbes that are present. And what are they doing there? They are helping us in many, many different things. So fermenting fibers or digesting fiber from the food that we eat is one of the major functions that they do, because we cannot digest the fiber from the food that we eat. So this kind of fermentation actually happens in the colon. It is very interesting if we look at what exactly happens, and then these fibers are converted into short chain fatty acids, among a lot of other things also. So there are three main short chain fatty acids. 90% of the short chain fatty acids that are produced in our gut are either acetate, propionate, or butyrate. There are others as well, but because these form 90% of the short chain fatty acids, we are only going to focus on these three. So if we are talking about the diet, you said that it's like throwing a party if we eat good quality fiber. That is absolutely true, because people who consume a diet that is very low in fiber, very heavy in animal based foods which completely lacks fiber, or eating foods that have empty calories like the refined flour, the breads, the pizzas, the burgers, all of these really lack any kind of fiber. So when we have a diet that is very poor in fiber, it actually kills off all of these beneficial microbes or germs that produce short chain fatty acids. So when we eat foods that are rich in fiber, it is like throwing a party for these bugs or for these germs. So they actually help us enrich all of these germs that produce short chain fatty acids. So it is very, very important that we eat foods that are rich in fiber. So you know what those foods are. Most of those are plant-based foods.
Yes, yes, Rashmi, thank you. Because when we talk about fiber, people are not very sure as to what exactly the role they play. They only think it is for emptying your, colon. That's the reason. If I have a constipation or a bloated gut, I mean bloated stomach, then I go for fibers. Lack of fibers, gives me constipation, but it has more to it, and let's talk about that in more detail. So we have now got acetate, propionate, and butyrate. That is what you mentioned as the three main SCFAs, because they are 90% of the SCFAs that are produced by the gut microbiome. So first, let us talk about acetate. So, is it true that acetate is the ultimate, multitasker, providing energy, regulating
Yes.
appetite, keeping our
So
gut barrier in check?
acetate is the shortest short chain fatty acid, and it is a very important energy source, not just for cells in the colon, not just for the intestinal cells, but also for the brain, for the muscle, for the heart. It is very important as an energy source for our organs. And if you think of it coming from the bacteria, we cannot produce acetate. It is made by the gut bacteria. It is also regulating our appetite. It is also regulating how we store fat. And do you know the interesting thing about acetate is it has antimicrobial properties. It actually controls the kind of bacteria or viruses or other germs that colonize our gut. So it keeps all the healthy germs in our body, in our gut. It promotes all of the healthy growth. It also helps maintain a proper gut barrier. So the antimicrobial activity of acetate is very, very important for a balanced gut microbiome. If we think about lipogenesis, that is storage of fatty acids in the liver, which actually promotes energy production, energy storage, that is also regulated by acetate. It is actually a precursor of these fatty acids.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. If you talk about the immune function, it is very, very anti-inflammatory. It modulates our immune system. It helps keep our immune system in check. It helps keep all the inflammatory diseases at bay. So whatever non-communicable diseases that we talk about, which are caused by inflammation, those are actually prevented because of a good level of acetate in our gut. So there are very
Oh.
specific microorganisms that we need, which should be there in our gut microbiome. So if they are present, they are going to make enough acetate for us to be healthy.
So what about propionate then? Propionate.
Yes, so if we talk about the different dietary fibers and the different kinds of short chain fatty acids, they are very specific. So there are different fatty acids, short chain fatty acids that are produced. So if I talk about three of the major ones, propionate also has very different functions. The first important function it has is gluconeogenesis. So it helps digest excessive carbohydrates and it converts them to glucose. So it's a source of energy, and it also helps in cholesterol metabolism. Excuse me. So the cholesterol that is made in our body, it is actually regulated by propionate. It is also one of the energy sources for our colonocytes or the intestinal cells, just like acetate is. I'll talk about what is the best source though later on. Again, just like acetate, this also propionate also has anti-inflammatory properties. It helps reduce inflammation in our body. It helps prevent autoimmune diseases. So again, that is very important along with acetate. So all three short chain fatty acids help us maintain the integrity of the gut barrier. So it helps us prevent leaky gut. It helps us prevent all of the diseases that are linked to leaky gut.
So butyrate. I mean, I'm specifically asking about butyrate because it seems. I mean, from what we have read, is it's more like a personal bodyguard protecting colon cells and fighting off cancer. It has been given that importance,
So butyrate is the main source of energy for our intestinal cells. Although acetate and propionate do provide some energy to our intestinal cells, butyrate is the main source of energy. And it also is very, very important again in the gut barrier integrity, in keeping the gut lining healthy. It helps in cancer prevention because it actually helps kill cancer cells. It helps in apoptosis of cancer cells. It also helps us in gene regulation. So this is a bit technical, but it also has an influence in histone deacetylase inhibitor. It acts as a histone deacetylase inhibitor, and it influences gene expression. That's how it regulates many diseases. It helps us prevent many diseases. It also helps us in metabolic health because it improves insulin sensitivity when we have enough levels of butyrate. So people who are pre-diabetic or diabetic also have insulin resistance. Many of them do. So if we have sufficient levels of butyrate in our gut, it helps us prevent or manage metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes.
So
So those are some very big roles.
when there are some low levels of these propionate, acetate, propionate, and butyrate, what diseases can be manifested? Or do you see any manifestation, or is there a link between the diseases and the lack of these SCFAs?
So there are many diseases that can be caused because of a lack of it. What actually happens is when we consume foods that are very low in fiber, that causes a complete imbalance. So we might not see that all of the short chain fatty acids are lacking. It really depends on the kind of dysbiosis a person has. What are the microbes that are missing? What short chain fatty acids are they not making? So there might be a very imbalanced level of different short chain fatty acids, or in some people, all three short chain fatty acids might be very low. So if we talk about specific things, inflammatory bowel disease is something that is very common, commonly seen in acetate deficiency. It is also seen in other short chain fatty acid deficiencies. There's Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis. So we have heard in one of the previous podcasts about how children are suffering from ulcerative colitis now. So this was unheard of before. This is because of a lack of short chain fatty acids. It is probably because of chronic inflammation that is happening in the digestive tract because acetate levels are very low. So there are
Also,
many other happening like heart disease because of this regulation of cholesterol, because of acetate being our primary source of energy for the heart. It affects hearts. If acetate levels are low, it is going to impact how the heart functions, how the blood vessels function. So it is going to increase the risk of heart disease. Again, type 2 diabetes is something that is very common in short chain fatty acid deficiencies, in acetate deficiency, because it is also involved in glucose metabolism. There are many mental health disorders that can be seen when there are acetate deficiencies. There's depression, anxiety. It is linked to many of the neurological symptoms, mood regulation, cognitive function, mental health disorders. Immune system, again, because it regulates the immune system, there's immune dysfunction that is going to happen in case of acetate deficiency. There are increased risks of cancers, especially of the colon, because abnormal cells start developing. And we see this in other short chain fatty acids as well, not just acetate.
actually, that was the interesting part because since this the whole episode has been on neurotransmitters, and we have been, emphasizing on the gut microbes actually developing or producing these neurotransmitters. I think SCFAs play an extremely important role when it comes to the development of these neurotransmitters. If I'm
Yes.
not mistaken, Rashmi, is that true?
Yes, yes, absolutely. They regulate how the vagus nerve is functioning. They regulate the synthesis itself of many of the neurotransmitters that we talked about, like dopamine, like serotonin. Many of these are actually regulated by short chain fatty acids. So there's a very strong interplay between all of the neurotransmitters that we talked about previously, which is why we are covering short chain fatty acids now, because they impact majority of the neurotransmitters that we have covered in the past.
Yes.
So that is again a
So
very
there is a
important
very
that
strong
they say.
link between the SCFAs and the neurotransmitters.
So
Most
who
people
would have
don't.
thought that eating fiber is going to keep us mentally healthy and strong?
Yes, yes, yes. So if people have heard of things like serotonin, the happiness hormone, or the dopamine, but they have never heard the about these unsung hero SCFA, which is actually helping regulate also these neurotransmitters. So now, when we have talked about this kind of lower levels of the SCFAs, we talk about balancing our gut health, and then we go for kind of supplements. There are a lot of supplements on getting off, you get them off the shelf. So what happens if there is an SCFA surplus? What happens when these acids, I mean, it's a short chain fatty acids, right?
So
So if
there
you
are different effects of different short chain fatty acids. It is very important to have this balance, because if even acetate that I just talked about, when it's low, you have seen how many things can go wrong. When it is in excess, it can cause increased obesity, it can cause increased fat storage, it can cause insulin resistance, because now it is going to change how insulin sensitivity is, it is going to change how glucose metabolism is. There's altered lipid metabolism, so this can lead to dyslipidemia, abnormal levels of lipid in or cholesterol in our blood. So it also increases the risk of heart disease, just like it does when levels are low. So it also increases, even high levels increase the risk of heart disease because of excessive energy that is going to the heart. There's gut dysbiosis that is seen in higher levels of acetate. If we talk about the other short chain fatty acids, propionate is also low levels of propionate is linked to inflammatory bowel disease. So we have covered inflammatory bowel disease previously in several podcasts. It is a condition which is very, very painful. People suffer from it for years, and they do not have any cure or respite from it. One of the main reasons for it is compromised levels of neurotransmitters, including majority of the short chain fatty acids. So we are offering microbiome testing for that, and that is something that is also going to help look at what is causing the dysbiosis. There are other things that can happen. Is it is increasing the risk of Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, like I said before, because it is a complete imbalance of short chain fatty acids. Again, the same things that we saw before: metabolic syndrome, heart disease, type 2 diabetes. High levels of propionate can cause behavioral issues. They can cause cognitive changes. They can cause gastrointestinal sensitivity, bloating, and gas. So there are many things, and of course, mental health changes also. If we talk about
yes.
butyrate, is the third short chain fatty acid that is extremely important. Again, low levels of it are associated with inflammatory bowel disease. Like it's a trait that we see in all short chain fatty acids. It also increases the risk of colon cancer because it is the primary source of energy for the colonocytes. So when the apoptosis does not happen, abnormal cells in the colon start growing even more, and the risk of colon cancer is increased significantly. It can cause metabolic disorders, like I said, type 2 diabetes, impaired gut barrier. When people have leaky gut, it is going to increase their risk of all kinds of chronic diseases. When butyrate levels are high, they can lead to gastrointestinal discomfort, like I said before, metabolic dysregulation, and a lot of mental health issues. So I'm going to talk about something very important. So this is what happens when the levels are either low or high. They are quite similar. There are small specific changes based on important functions. But one of the interesting things that researchers have seen is the impact of short chain fatty acids on autism spectrum disorders.
Yes. That has been a very recent research that is happening on autistic children, and they have found out that there is a link between SCFAs and autism disorders. Also, they have correlated some of these to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. So there is a connect that is developing between the short chain fatty acids and these kind of even schizophrenia for that matter. So
Yes.
yes, me, you have anything to say on that?
Yes, yes. So, one of the important things that I want to mention here is the impact of high levels of propionate, which have been associated with neuroinflammation, with immune response that is abnormal in individuals who are autistic or who have the autism spectrum disorder. So, this has been seen, a lot of research has shown that this excessive propionate can actually cross the blood-brain barrier and that can impact brain function. So this is something that has been seen for several years. It's not something new that research has shown. And there is imbalance in the gut microbiome that is seen, that is associated with these high levels of propionate in individuals with autism. Similarly, butyrate also has an anti-inflammatory properties. It has very significant impact on the gut integrity. So individuals who are given butyrate supplements are actually, it really helps with the autism spectrum disorder. It helps mitigating some of the dysregulation that is seen, the epigenetic dysregulation. If we talk about acetate, again, acetate levels, there's not that much known about how they impact ASD, but propionate has a very clear link on the neuroprotection that is missing in autistic individuals.
Oh, that is really, really informative, Rashmi. Before we continue, so viewers, if you're looking to keep your microbiome in tip-top shape, let's dive into the grocery list of foods that regulate SCFA production. So it's very simple. We talked about fiber-rich foods. So, what are the top fiber-rich foods that we should be munching on to boost our acetate, propionate, and butyrate? So that would include fruits of any type, but basically more emphasis on fruits with more fibers like apples, pears, berries, bananas, and those which are also inflammatory. You can have all type of fruits, colored vegetables, whole grains, legumes. And legumes, believe me, legumes are magical to get gut health for gut health. And then we come to the second part of it, prebiotic foods. These are foods that help feed beneficial gut bacteria. So boosting SCFA production. Top prebiotic food include garlic, onions, and bananas. There are much more on those. And probiotic foods that introduce beneficial bacteria into the gut, enhancing SCFA production. These are all kinds of fermented foods. Some things that you might be, knowing of, like yogurt, kimchi, pickles. Some of you might have even had sauerkraut or kefir or kombucha for that. And then fourth is the resistant starch, which Rashmi will talk about in a short time. But resistant starch is a type of fiber that reaches the colon intact, where it's fermented by the gut bacteria into SCFAs. So foods rich in resistant starch would include cooked and cooled potatoes, cooked and cooled rice, green bananas, legumes, oats, barley, and many, many other things, which we will take up as a separate podcast. So, Rashmi, what do you have to say about this?
Yes, yes, absolutely. There are supplements that are available, but instead of supplements, there are, of course, natural things that are available. As we all always say, that fiber-rich food, prebiotics that you just mentioned, probiotics, that is fermented foods, really help improve the diversity of the gut microbiome, and that is going to improve the amount of short chain fatty acids that are produced in our gut. So that is very, very important. And when we talk about butyrate, especially, ghee is an amazing source of butyrate. Ghee has butyrate, butter has butyrate. The only thing to remember is that when we consume these, it should be consumed in moderation because they also have saturated fats. But Ghee is definitely a wonderful source. That's why we have it in our cuisine. We have such amazing dishes that are made using ghee. So
Yes, yes.
that's something that we always. In addition, so resistant starch, as you talked about, it is very important. So you would think that why would you cook and cool potatoes, or why would you cook and cool rice, even bread, if we want to improve the quality of the starch that we are eating. So starch gives rise to glucose in our bloodstream very, very rapidly, because starch is a simple sugar. But when we refrigerate it, what happens is it is converted to resistant starch. So when we refrigerate it for 16 hours to 24 hours, it is converted to a kind of starch that we cannot digest. So it has to be digested by the gut microbiome. So just like fiber cannot be digested by us, resistant starch also cannot be digested by us. When the gut microbiome digests it, it makes short chain fatty acids instead of glucose from the same starch that you would have consumed and gotten a blood sugar spike and then an insulin spike. So if we want to prevent all of that, the trick is to cook or whatever, cool these potatoes that are cooked, cool any starchy foods that are cooked, and then even if you reheat it, it is not going to destroy the resistant starch that much. So that is a trick that we often use to have good short chain fatty acids made from starch, which is a simple sugar.
Yes.
So
Very interesting there, right, Rashmi?
yes,
Because whoever thought that cooling and storing food for 24 hours, cooked food especially, would
I used to
make
do that
this
as a
change.
grad student. Without knowing that
Yes.
I was doing something so healthy. It was something that I did out of convenience, and I had no idea that it was a healthy habit that I was actually.
And it's a
Uh,
common practice in India, in many of the states. Of course, it is a combination of both. Cook rice and soak it overnight. That's of course fermentation, but the rice is again made to, is kept for a longer period, so that the starch itself, it becomes resistant starch. So it's interesting to see that some of the things have been already incorporated in our ethnic foods, and still we are unaware of the importance of the role they play in our good
so
health.
rice gets a bad reputation because of the amount of starch that it has, because we are all consuming
With
polished rice.
potatoes, same with
We are
potatoes.
consuming polished rice. Yeah, the same with potatoes. But for rice, I would just want to mention that if we use this trick of cooking and cooling the rice, not only does the starch become resistant, it gives us short chain fatty acids. The other thing to do with rice is to ferment it overnight. We have covered it previously, but overnight fermented rice is also an amazing probiotic food. So rice can, if used properly, can be amazing for gut health. So choose what you are doing with your rice. Choose what
Yes,
rice you are using, which should be unpolished rice. So that will
yes.
give you many, many more benefits than going towards metabolic syndrome or obesity or things
Who said
that.
diabetics cannot have?
Yes,
Usually when you
diabetes
come up with diabetes, the first thing that goes off your plate is the
is
rice and potatoes. They are taken
yes,
off, but if you eat them in
if
the right
consumed
way,
properly. Yes,
if you can consume them as well. So
yes.
besides
So
this, we
besides
talked
this, there
about
are many other things like exercise, like sunlight, like meditation, like stress relief that really, really help reduce stress, that help get our circulation going, that help improve the diversity of the microbiome. Anything that helps improve the diversity of the microbiome is going to improve the synthesis of short chain fatty acids in our body.
right. So combined together, these things actually boost SCFA production in our gut. So whether it's meditation where you keep your stress at bay, and the correlation that research has shown in development of these SCFAs in certain cases, and hence the production of certain neurotransmitters, or together as a combination of both, how they help you overcome a lot of your mental issues. Those are one. Other things are the food that we talked about. We need a gut microbiome, new microbes, and those are could be introduced using probiotics, and those will help again, develop good quality SCFA for us.
Yes.
we
I
feed
just
those.
I want Yes, I just wanted to mention a study that was done on ulcerative colitis patients. So, in these
Yes.
patients, this is a very old study, by the way, it's not new. So, in this study, researchers actually did a butyrate enema on patients suffering from ulcerative colitis because
Oh, okay.
the distal, it is the colon, it is the proximal part of the colon that actually makes all of this. It is interesting that by the time the fiber reaches the distal colon, it is almost completely exhausted because of this process of fermentation and the process of short chain fatty acid synthesis. But when they are not made, gut health is so poor, there's so much dysbiosis, the gut lining is not intact. So in these patients, when they were given an enema in the colon of butyrate, it improved the mucosal lining, it improved the gut lining, it helped improve the symptoms. Our traditional cuisine promotes the use of butyrate rich ghee.
Yes.
It is there
And
in our
also, it's an interesting thing. I'm not an expert on Ayurveda, but if you ask an Ayurveda expert, they do have enemas which actually help, are given to patients to treat certain colonal
we
issues.
do have many forms of treatment using medicated ghee because it
Yeah.
is such a rich source of butyrate.
No, I mean, it's either way, both ways. They either ask you to consume the ghee or
Or
give it as an enema as well. So yeah, you can see the link. So much of it that shows there is a connect between the butyrate and the colon. So viewers, this was an interesting episode, and I really hope that you take back home a lot of rich information from this episode. Thank you, Dr. Rashmi, for being there for us to explain all these concepts and to make us aware how close we are to getting well by our own selves rather than having supplements. It's all the food and the exercise that we do or have. So thank you once again, Rashmi, and
thank you
thank you,
so much,
viewers.
Sujata, for the wonderful questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, viewers. So, if you really look at it, whether it's short chain fatty acids, any other neurotransmitters, or anything that is related to our overall health, our body has an intelligence designed to heal itself. We just need to provide it with the right kind of food, the right environment, and a stress free life, some simple exercise, some meditation. That's all we need to do. Isn't it very, very simple instead of looking at complicated medications that we take throughout life? These are very, very simple solutions. If you want to know more such things, do subscribe to our channel, do like this video, do share it with anybody who might need it. Thank you so much.